Awesome. So this is actually our 18th meeting, which is kind of crazy. We started out in 2017 and it's been many years, but the 18th meeting. So here's our board of directors. We had elections in November. I think it'd be great if for the board members who are on could kind of just introduce themselves, talk about their role in the society and what draws them or what interests them about carnivorous plants. So I can start. I'm Kevin. I've been growing carnivorous plants since 2003, so 20 years actually at this point. I've at some point grown almost all the genuses except for Triphyophyllum, I think. And I mostly grow at this point Nepenthes and Sarracenia, although I still have, a bunch of all the other random genuses. And recently, after moving to Cherry Hill, I also built a basement greenhouse that I have proceeded to fill with Nepenthes. So that's me. I'll pass it on to Rick.
Yeah, hi, my name is Rick. I'm the vice president of the MACPS. I basically, assist Kevin in every way that I can with keeping things running here, and he'll help coordinate events and all that. I have been growing carnivorous plants since 2014, so getting close to 10 years now. I mainly dabble in Nepenthes, quite enthusiastically, although I do, like Kevin, sort of have at least something from almost every genera out there of carnivorous plants. So, I've kind of tried it all, but definitely Nepenthes is by far the big one for me. Otherwise, besides that, I live over in Woodbridge, Virginia, kind of, in the Nova area, just south of Alexandria. And yeah.
I am Blake. I use he, him, or they, them pronouns. I've been growing carnivorous plants for like maybe 5 or 6 years, and I pretty much stick to things I can grow easily in my relatively dark apartment. So I have some pretty nice like windowsill pings, and then a terrarium with some pretty nice sundews. Yeah, I live in outside of DC in Maryland in like the Wheaton Silver Spring area. And let's see, last year I was like the past 2 years I was secretary, and we needed a treasurer, so now I am the treasurer.
I don't think Joshua's on, but Jackie, do you want to talk about yourself?
Okay, hi, I'm Jackie. I used to be the treasurer, but then I had to pass it on, so Blake took over, thankfully. I have been growing carnivorous plants probably for about 7 years now. I'm in the Philadelphia area, as we were discussing, in University City. I live in one of the big row homes, so the light is a real problem, so I just have lots of grow lights. But I've tried lots of different types of plants. My current favorites are Brocchinia reducta. I really like the carnivorous bromeliads, and also I'm very fond of my Pinguicula gigantea, which is one of my current faves. But I'm willing to try anything. I kind of have a basement that's sort of filled with too many plants, according to my family. But yes, I've enjoyed them. And I currently work at the Mutter Museum in the Benjamin Rush Medicinal Garden, although I will be finishing that soon. But I'm in Philly, and I'd love to meet anyone who's in the Philly area, talk plants.
Thanks. I think David also couldn't make it, but Casey, do you want to go?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm new to the board. I live in Horsham, which is north of Philly by Willow Grove. I've been growing carnivorous plants since the 80s when I was a kid and stopped for a long time, but I've gotten back into it recently. I'm a professor of anthropology at Muhlenberg College. I have a book coming out on queer Chinese culture and activism soon. If you're interested, hit me up for more information. I grow mainly temperate carnivorous plants, so Sarracenia and Venus flytraps that I can grow outside. Anything that I can't kill and seems to come back year after year is good for me. Looking forward to, getting to know people better, and thanks for coming.
And last but definitely not least, Samara.
Hi, everyone. I'm Samara. I'm also new to the board. I have been growing carnivorous plants probably only about 5 years, but I've been interested in them since my undergrad. I wrote my thesis paper on carnivorous plants probably 15 years ago now. So I've always had an interest in them, and I currently work at the University of Pennsylvania greenhouse, and I have a small collection of carnivorous plants there, and they're my favorite plants in the greenhouse. I hope to share my love of carnivorous plants with other people.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. So here's a briefing of the schedule today. It's a pretty short meeting. So right after introductions, we'll hear from a couple of people who exhibited plants at the Philadelphia Flower Show just a while ago. So we have a couple of awesome speakers to talk about that. And then we'll kind of open the floor up just to talk about carnivorous plants, their cultivation. So if you have any questions, feel free to shout them out. The board is here to answer questions, but also, we know that a lot of you guys have way more experience than many of us. So also feel free to chime in with any answers. And then after that, we'll end with a photo contest announcement. So we'll show you all the photos, we'll show you the winners, and then we'll also do some raffle prizes. That's the schedule for today. I want to talk briefly about membership. A lot of you have seen this slide before. So membership has a couple of benefits. It allows you to sell in our auctions that we have in our in-person meetings. We'll also occasionally have auctions of special item plants. If we go on field trips, members get subsidies at hotels. There's a 10% discounted carnivorous plant nursery. And then we can also have members-only meals or events. And then you can see on the slide, there are a couple of different options for memberships. Most commonly, we have people applying for individual memberships. That's $20 a year. But we also have family memberships, student memberships, and corporate memberships. And all of the information about memberships is on our website. So previously, memberships they lasted through the calendar year. We realize that's kind of not great if you want to buy a membership in, say, November, then your membership expires in a month. Although because of the pandemic and things like that, we've generally allowed people to have their membership through the end of the next year. However, going forward, your membership will now last 1 year from your payment date, but it will kind of expire the first of the subsequent month, if that makes sense. So for example, if you buy a membership today, your membership will expire May 1st of next year. And that just makes it a little bit easier on our end to track who's a member and who's not. If you have any questions, feel free to email us. We can talk more. And then here is also the schedule for events for this year, for the most part. So coming up in June, which is actually just 2 months away, we'll be meeting at Carnivorous Plant Nursery, which we have met there several times before. And this meeting will really focus on propagating carnivorous plants and starting seeds. Then in August, we'll be meeting at Black Moshannon State Park. So this will be a field trip. We'll have a bog walk with a naturalist. In September, we'll have Keystone Clash. This is actually a fish event. So for those of you, there's a lot of overlap between the people who keep aquariums and people who grow carnivorous plants. But this is actually kind of like a fish expo of sorts. But we have a table there, so we'll be selling some carnivorous plants. And if you're a member, you're more than welcome. I mean, we would love to have you guys there and to also sell your own plants, and you get to keep some of the proceeds from your plants. And then we'll also be working on a late fall meeting. That's still to be determined. But for right now, you have these 3 events that you can put in your calendars, and we hope to see you there. So that's all that I have for introductions. And then I think what we can do now is actually talk a little bit about the Philadelphia Flower Show. So for those of you who don't know about the Philadelphia Flower Show, I'll just give a kind of a brief intro. It happens every year. It's an enormous flower show. I believe it's actually like the largest in the country. Usually it happens in the spring. So this year it happened in March, although because of the pandemic, for the past, I think 2 years, 2 or 3, I forget actually now, it was actually over the summer. But now they've moved back into the Philadelphia Convention Center. And the way that kind of competitions work is that there's an area in the middle called the Horticourt. And so amateur growers can submit their own plants for judging. There are tons of different categories, probably well over 100 different categories. the categories range from things like bog plant in a container less than 6 inches to informal foliage to all sorts of different cacti classes. There's a ton of stuff, ton of different ways to, ton of different categories to enter plants in. And so there are generally 3 judging days. You bring your plants to the convention center in the morning of one of those judging days. There's a kind of a registration system. You have a bunch of people coming over to make sure that you brought the plants that you actually said you would bring, to check your plants for diseases, for bugs, because you don't want to be spreading any of those things to other people's plants. And then ultimately your plants get staged and then put on these tables or benches so people can kind of see them. And then later in that day, a bunch of judges come through and award prizes. Generally, there's for every category, there's 1 first prize winner, and then they can choose to award multiple second, third, and honorable mention prizes. And so there hasn't really been a carnivorous plant category in the flower show per se, although they have had bog categories. And so for a lot of us who grow carnivorous plants, we'll enter them in the bog category. Although I'll say I also enter plants into informal foliage, or things such as miniature plant. I mean, Pinguicula fits really well in the miniature category, or 3 of a kind, 3 of the same genus. There's terrarium categories. And so it's a really fun way to show off your plants, to get some recognition for growing your plants well, and then to also meet a lot of awesome growers from around the area. And I know, actually, I have met a lot of you guys currently on this call through the Philadelphia Flower Show. So it really is a phenomenal way to just increase awareness and network and learn more about these awesome plants, and just, all sorts of different kinds of plants. So today we have a couple of people who have generously agreed to talk about their plants, talk about their experience in the Philadelphia Flower Show, maybe show off some plants or show off some pictures. So I'd just like to introduce the first speaker, Keegan. If you are ready, take it away.
Hi guys, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Let's see. It's not doing it.
You should be able to now.
Okay. Go. How do I go full screen on this thing?
I think is it one of the buttons on the bottom right?
All right. Oh, there it is.
That one?
Yep.
All right.
It's
Yeah.
the one.
So can you guys see that?
Yep.
Great. All right. So these were my entries in the flower show this year. Couple of different things. I've got a non-carnivorous in here too. Wardian case with some Drosera adelae in there. A couple other non-carnivores. A nice Nepenthes, Briggsiana, and then more Drosera adelae in another terrarium over here. This was when we were setting up before the show. And then here's during the show, Briggsiana, entered as a hanging plant. Had this plant for maybe 4 or 5 years. Got it when it was real small. It's grown really nice for me. It looked good as a hanger with the other hanging plants there. I was actually surprised there were no other Nepenthes entered for that. This little guy did well. I kind of threw this together before the show. It's really filled out that terrarium nicely. These guys grow with almost no light. You can like almost put them in the dark and they do really well. There's a nice picture of the dew on the leaves there. The Wardian case did really well. I've had this set up for about 5 years. The Drosera has been in there the whole time. It's grown really nicely. There's a little sphagnum moss. I really haven't messed with this too much throughout the years. I did add a little Selaginella, some Peperomia, and the Tillandsia does not live in there. That stays in a higher light environment. But this really looked good for the show for me. Here's a shot without the glass on the top of it to really give you some detail. Nice piece of driftwood in there, fossil rock, and the Drosera just loves it. And it was a good show for me. The judges really liked my stuff, and it went really well. So it's a good time. Any questions? Casey?
I was going to ask, did the plants suffer at all for being in the show?
Yes, the Nepenthes. I should have taken a picture of the Nepenthes. Almost every picture dried out during the show. When I picked it up, the medium was dry. It looked like nobody had watered it in a few days. So it suffered greatly. The stuff in the terrariums, they do fine. I water those once a month or so normally, so they don't really suffer. But yeah, the watering can be a little, and I always take the distilled water with me so that they have it to water, but it's the watering can be a little spotty, I think.
That's what I've heard too. Yeah, thank you.
In the chat, Michael asked if your plants, if the Nepenthes recovered.
What was that?
Did your plants recover after the show?
Oh yeah. They're all doing fine. The Nepenthes, the pitcher's brown, but the plant itself is fine. It's a really low humidity environment inside the convention center there. I think everything across the board gets a little beat up just from being in such a low humidity environment.
And Drew also asked, what species of sundew did you say needed almost no light?
The Australian species, it's amazing. You can grow them in high light. They actually, so the ones in my Wardian case there have been getting more light, so the leaves tend to be a little more colorful and a little smaller. And then when I grow them in very low light, as in the little round terrarium, the leaves tend to be bigger, greener, and sometimes even a little roughly. So it's amazing the difference in the way the leaves look depending on how much light you're giving them. Yeah, it's a good species. Prolifera is another Australian species that doesn't need much light, and then Schizandra, I think, is the other one. All grow in similar low light conditions. Cool. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Keegan. Beautiful plants and pictures as always. John, are you ready?
Yes.
Awesome. Take it away.
All right. Let me see. Host disabled participant screened.
You should be able to do it now. Sorry.
Okay. This is not my screen. Still trying to figure this out. What am I doing wrong here? Oh, here we go. A couple of points about the exhibiting in the flower show. You're supposed to register the plants about 1 or 2 months in advance. And you can it's easier to substitute a plant than to add one. So if you have a Nepenthes that's maybe having a wardrobe malfunction, you can substitute a different Nepenthes without very much trouble. But it's worth entering as many plants as you're even thinking about it, that might even possibly be happy. And then some of them, maybe some scale will find it, or some disease might hit it. So you just bring in the ones that are actually doing all right and are exhibitable and look happy enough. And there are 3 rounds of judging. The judges have very different taste. And they're different judges. They notice different things. Just one thing to bear in mind. But the other thing is that each of those periods in the morning, then you can go in, and if a plant is really suffering, I mean, sundews especially, you can withdraw them, or again substitute a different plant to just to get through the climate. Although I found that for everything except Sarracenia, the summer shows were a little bit worse because of the heat wave. My cephalotus never recovered from the 90 some temperature when it was an FDR park. But anyway, I brought it down to about 4 items. One was a terrarium that was very much of a last minute grab bag of little plants. But I found since then that the pinguiculas are far happier in the terrarium than they were in my larger fish tank where I normally keep my carnivores. So I'm just going to keep them as a pinguicula tank. The sundews I should probably remove. Yeah, this was my substitute. I had the Boschiana, which you might be able to see right behind me, initially entered, but I think there's a small problem with it. There weren't any happy traps, and it only produced good traps after the show. So I substituted a sanguinea that was hiding in the window and was in much better shape than I thought it would be. They've been ambiguous about whether I could put bell jars and glass containers in categories that don't specify them, but I noted in the fine print for the bog gardens, they just vaguely allowed a glass container, and I wondered if they were talking about the tray below it, but I took full advantage to protect a Drosera multifida under that, although the problem with the glass, you couldn't really see it up close, but the plant at least made it through that environment. There was a time when I first exhibited it, there was on a table when I was crimping it and cutting off any suffering tentacles. A lady who was sharing the table stuck her fur coat into it. Fortunately, enough of the goo got onto the coat, but that was a disaster. So I really try to protect these plants, but they're a lot of fun to exhibit when they work. And this one, last year there was a pinguicula only exhibit, and it was almost a little bit excessive to bring in this very, very happy and exuberant Moctezuma times gigantea, by gigantea, and it just produces flower after flower after flower after flower. And they didn't have the pinguicula category this time, but there was a bog plant category. And this one just seems to tolerate just about any environment. I'm just surprised at how it just keeps chugging along. So I think that's all I have to point out here. And I just have those 4 plants. I first met up with Kevin, who contacted me after one of these shows and informed me about this club. And I'm just very happy. I have to say I particularly liked that Adelaide that was in that Wardian case from the previous exhibit, from the previous showing, because it just seemed that Adelaide just could get so happy, and you can do things with it. In the chat room, I see, what is the species of it? It's a hybrid gigantea times Moctezuma. Yeah, Keegan, yeah, that's the one. You had that wonderful Adelaide. What I found in the past for Adelaides was to go back and forth between dark and light environments. And sometimes you can get best of both worlds and get large red leaves, but my Adelaides weren't so happy this year. So I plunked one into the terrarium, but they didn't do so well. So I was happy to see that Keegan represented Adelaides very nicely. I first wanted to get into it partly because I saw misidentified Adelaide. I forget what it was misidentified as, and thought, well, I could do that. If that thing, which wasn't even an Adelaide, could get by the judge's nose, maybe I could do it too. Anything else? But
Do you usually grow is your ping in a clay pot? Is that something that you found works really well?
no. Okay, here's the problem is that they have very strict rules on the pots. And so I grow it in a plastic pot, your standard plastic nursery pot, but that's excluded according to their rules. So what I do is I cut off the rim of it and submerge it into a clay pot that's just slightly large enough, and then cover the what's visible in the plastic with sphagnum or whatever surface they're allowing that year. And this plant seemed to especially like that combination, so I never took it out of the previous year's wardrobe. So no, I do not grow it in a plastic or in a clay pot, but it seems to like that pot inside a pot. I guess the sphagnum that I stock between the two pots seems to provide some extra moisture, maybe.
John, thanks for talking about that. I'm actually reminded that someone, I think 5 or so years ago, had taken a picture of one of my plants at the flower show and posted it in one of the large carnivorous plant Facebook groups, because they were commenting that there was this this card next to the plant that said distilled water only. And so they were the commenter was talking about how funny it was that I had to specifically put that kind of card there. But then someone else commented and said, but they're still growing it in a clay pot. And then I felt, urged to say, actually, I don't grow these in clay pot.
Yes.
They're just double potted because the flower show does not like like plastic nursery pots. So thanks for pointing that out.
You're welcome.
If there are no more questions for John, Amy, would you like to talk a little bit?
We do have a question about could you use glazed ceramic pots
No.
for pings?
No.
I've always just used plastic ones. Oh, in the flower show.
No, they don't like glazed.
Yeah, they're quite specific. There's a whole page actually in the exhibitor's guide about what kinds of pots are allowed. So they highly prefer those, just the terracotta clay pots, the brown terracotta ones. They also allow, under certain circumstances, dark colored plastic pots, black or dark green plastic pots, but highly glazed containers, nursery style pots are not permitted.
No. In fact, I had a bog plant, junkless twister, that I exhibited in a 3 1/4 inch plastic pot. It got 2 reds, but I think it would have gotten a blue had it been in a clay pot. However, they love to be in water, and clay pot just wouldn't provide enough water in the environment. So, yeah, they're anal about that clay pot stuff.
I have managed to sneak in a large nursery green pot into the flower show once, but only because the plant was enormous and they felt bad for me for bringing it and then to make me bring it back. So I think under certain circumstances, you can get away with it, but certainly not advised.
Yeah, I can.
Take it away, Amy.
Sure. Hi. Okay. I didn't actually prepare a PowerPoint or anything. So this was my first year participating in the flower show. I was encouraged by a group of plant friends who have a little group chat going to kind of support each other during the show, and got kind of pulled in that way. So what everyone else, I was going to talk a little bit about sort of being a first-time exhibitor. What I really found was interesting was really reading the exhibitor's guide that comes out in January or February. If you are interested in doing it, kind of checking out what sometimes it feels like the following the rules is a little more important than anything else. So about your clay pots, things like that. I entered about, I think starting in January, February, I entered about 30 plants. And of those 30, maybe 5 ended up coming. So definitely enter far more than you think. If you kind of think like, hey, maybe that would look nice in March, go ahead and pre-enter it. There's no deduction for not bringing something that you don't, if you pre-enter it and don't bring it, there's no points taken off for that. So I entered in Drosera capensis because I figured it was pretty bulletproof, that it could stand up to being in the Horticourt conditions. As other people had mentioned, it's very dry. I figured it could stand up to it for a week. I also kind of gambled and put it in a clay pot and just left it in a clay pot, no double potting, anything like that. And just kind of left it for the week, and it did all right. And I think it got a second most days in bog plants. And I entered a few Pinguicula, which I thought would do a lot better than they did, but they ended up in the miniature category. In the outdoor shows, I had noted that they had a dedicated butterwort category, but this year it seemed to have disappeared. So I'm hoping it will be back in future shows. But I entered them in the miniatures category. A tough thing with Pinguicula is timing their dormancy to the show period. It seems to be the things that look great in January really weren't looking all that great in March. Some things that I hadn't thought about in January ended up looking fabulous and coming with me. But I entered, I believe, a Pinguicula cuensis, a Gigantea ex Montezuma, and I'm trying to think what else I brought. I know I brought those in addition. They really did not love the show environment. They really were not, by the time I picked them up, were pretty dried out. They have since bounced back and are doing wonderfully in the spring. If the show was in May, that might be the perfect time if you're a Pinguicula person. But I really enjoyed it. I kind of, once you get the hang of the rule book and what kind of you need to be doing, just following the entry part, description for that class, it really is a pretty stress-free experience after you kind of get through the big load part of it, like the big load in, and then you're like, okay, you can set them down, be done with them. But it was a lot of fun. I met a lot of really great people. I met a lot of people that are on this call. Just in passing, I'm sorry I couldn't chat with you more. Sometimes there is an early morning component to it. So if you're not a morning person, take that into consideration, because you will have to be there between 7 and 9 a.m. If you're entering plants that are not entered every day. So yeah, otherwise I highly recommend people doing it. It was a really great experience. My plants were okay. They have all, like I said, have all bounced back. I didn't lose anything completely. And you also, I see in the comments too, you also do get into the show for free, at least on the days you're entering. But my partner and I found that you really do get into the show for free kind of whenever. So if you want to see the flower show a couple times, this is at no cost. That's a really great way to do it. But if anybody has any questions about like getting Pinguicula through the show or anything like that, I'm happy to kind of give some answers.
You also can volunteer for the InfoNet, the horticulture information booth in the Horticourt. I'm a vice chair of that, and we always need knowledgeable horticultural people in there. And you get in for free.
Yeah, volunteering is great. I would love to do more of that next year.
Yeah. And Kevin, thank you for your points. Liberty Bell, thanks you for your points.
Thanks, Amy. There are a bunch of other people I know that are hiding on this call who have experience with the Philadelphia Flower Show. I know Joe has actually worked at the Flower Show for many years. Any chance you want to give your experience on working at the show?
That was a pretty good introduction. Thanks, Kevin. And Amy, I want to thank you for not having a PowerPoint. I think I one-upped you without having a camera so you can see this ugly face of mine. But I'm going to be honest with you. I actually started out as a volunteer in 2016. By the time 2018 rolled around, I was a vice chair, then to become a chair. That's how I met Kevin. And I also know Russell Stover by name because of the society. And where is Mr. Orr? So when it comes to knowing you guys, I've actually seen you, Kevin. I met you running around putting water in my office. So I was kind of laughing. But in 2016, I got hired at one of the local community colleges down here in South Jersey at Cumberland County College, which is now Rowan College of South Jersey. And they were already exhibitors in the show. So I was trying to check everybody else's plans in at the same time, now doing my own program. So it is kind of funny. I want to thank everybody for their honest reactions to the treatment of the plants, the classes that you're involved with, because at the show, I just found out we are the largest international horticultural competitive classes in the world right now. We have more classes here at this show than anywhere else. So if you wind up getting a ribbon, it's kind of bragging rights. So it's a good thing. With my own college, yes, I have lost plants. And it was at FDR Park the second year. That was the year, Kevin, you came in with a very large plant and a very large plastic nursery pot. And we were not letting you go. So I will admit, that's how it goes. If you ever want to volunteer, there's always a way of doing it. And yes, if you're an exhibitor, you can get in anytime to see your plants. So it's a benefit in itself. If you have never seen the exhibitor's guide, get yourself a copy. I don't think the link's available on the website. I'm looking at it now and couldn't find it, but you can contact comp classes at Penn Hort and they'll send you a digital copy of probably last year's show. Go ahead and check it out. And I want to thank you for the suggestions for more classes, and there's air quotes, for anything carnivorous, because I will be honest with you, first time I met Kevin was when somebody said, this guy's got these really cool, and yes, I grow things, they die. If it doesn't die, I keep doing you. So Drosera, I'm really good at. Sericinia, not so much. The Penthes, they look pretty hanging in somebody else's greenhouse. But I'll get there. So, but other than that, I teach over at the Ag Hort program. So I love chlorophyll. I just keep changing the view every once in a while, and sometimes bipedals do get on my nerves. So with that being said, this is a really good group. I just found you guys a little over a year ago. So I really think you ought to have yourselves a table there eventually at the show, but just like Indoor Plant Society. So anyhow, I'm going to get off the horn. I don't want to screw up your schedule. And I want to say thanks. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Yul.
Thanks, Joe, for that perspective. Yeah, we would at some point, I think, love to have a formal table at the show. We're still, as a society, still growing, but we're like accumulating more and more members, particularly around the Philadelphia area. And so if it does, become an interest of multiple members, and we have enough people power to do it, I would totally support that.
This year they did something different. They grouped together plant societies together so that at the end of the Horticourt, there was like 6 plant societies on 3 tables, and you could certainly join that group. That way you don't have to have staffing all the hours during the flower show, because you could share it with other clubs.
Yeah, that is great to know. Thank you. We'll definitely, put it on the table for next year's, when next year's show rolls around.
Yeah.
Because I was
also, I know you've been at the show for.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
They're actually encouraging that. I just wanted to catch Russell at the very end. That was a discussion that was on the table last year. That's how the 3 of them got there this year. So I'm sure we can make room for 4.
Yeah, there's actually 6, I think. That started back when African Violet used to have their own exhibit, and they stopped doing it because they couldn't staff it. And so we approached Sam, and he agreed to it, but it took all these years for that to happen.
Russell, I know you've been at the show for many years. Any other, you've already shared a bunch of insight. Anything else that you want to just talk about regarding entering the show or kind of working there?
Yeah, if in September, you can get a printed copy of the exhibit guide by calling PHS's main office and ask the receptionist to get you a copy. They come out. It comes out in September, a little late this year, because they got a little late start because of the summer program. But normally it's available in September. And I mean, it's a good book. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there, and you can try a lot of different things too. But as he indicated, sign up for any plant that's possible that it might be in shape at the time you do the entry, because there's no penalty. I've exhibited as many as 60, and I would have like 100 of them under. But this year I only had, I think, about 30, and I only put 11 in. So there's no penalty. It's just, and it's a great group of people. It really is.
Any other comments, questions from anyone else in the audience? There was a question in the chat from Keegan, to Joe. Any way to enter in bog plants into the enter all day category?
I was just getting ready to respond back to him.
All right.
No, it's good. This is good for the announcement. The exhibitors guide, there's going to be a couple of meetings that will start happening in August. Everybody kind of took their hat off for a second, but they're looking to increase the bogs as it is. If you send an email to comclasses@pennhort.org, I've got the email address in the chat to him right now. I think I could do it to everybody. You can actually suggest to have that in. Thomas Hawkins right now is the Hort chair. So he would be one of the ones that you definitely want, the British guy, the guy that had the British accent. He would be the one to get a hold of. So if not, everybody that enters a plant knows Elsa Ephraim, and she can be reached at elsafram@pennhort.org. And she actually handles your registration with your plants and everything. She's the one who can pull up all your records and everything that you've done. So, and I only know that as an exhibitor. I don't know that from the volunteering end, but I'm happy I do now. So they're the two that you could definitely contact and get things done. Yes, more bog classes. I was happy they brought back Life on a Log. I haven't seen that in years.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it was a cool one.
yeah, and I'm thinking I've already got 3 logs in a fake bog in my greenhouse at the college. So I can't grow pitcher plants, but I've got cranberries everywhere and sphagnum moss. But so yes, send it to that email address, and you can definitely get a hold of everybody. Hold on. There you go.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it.
No problem. Come on.
All right. At this point, well, thank you to everyone for all of those pictures, the experience talks. Yeah, thanks for all of that. At this point, I think we'll just open it up to general Q&A about carnivorous plants and how to grow them. So anyone who has a question, feel free to type it out or call it out. And then anyone here, feel free to answer. We also have a couple of questions submitted in beforehand that we can also answer if people are camera shy.
Can I ask one question before I mute myself?
Yeah.
Is this the recording of this meeting available after the meeting?
We're currently recording it, and plans will be to post it on the website.
All right, cool. That's all. I'm just lazy. I don't feel like looking for a recorder or trying to catch all the advice. I'm going back to the darkness now.
Thanks.
So we had a few questions that were submitted ahead of time when people RSVP'd. So the first one is the best method to grow from seed. And I know we'll have answers now, but also at our next meeting, which will be in person, we are planning on doing a like growing from seed and propagating workshop. So in addition to getting information now, we'll have some hands-on stuff with that the next meeting. I have zero experience growing stuff from seed, but I am certain somebody else on this call does and can answer.
Is there any specification about what kind of seed we're talking about? Okay. I mean, I've grown Nepenthe seed and germinated that. So I mean, I can say, you know, if anybody's curious about that, you know, the method that I do normally use for that, I've tried a lot of different things out, and Nepenthe seed's actually probably one of the trickiest things to kind of work with because they're not at all, you know, they're not hardy at all for a long period of time. They pretty much have to be sown very quickly after the pods have popped. But what I found over the years works best is actually to treat them just like a typical seed. You sow them in just, you know, pure sphagnum, and I blast my seed, regardless of if it's highland, lowland, intermediate, whatever temperature wise, it goes into a hot house underneath, you know, really high lighting. And, you know, basically I put it in a covered tray with just a little bit of, you know, a couple holes poked into it for ventilation. And, you know, that usually gets me a pretty solid germination if the seed is good and viable. But it does still take a lot of time. You know, the best case scenario for Nepenthe seed is usually at least like, I don't know, 45, 60 days. But sometimes it can take months to get them started. But, you know, that's generally been, you know, the way that I've done it there for specifically Nepenthe seed. I'm assuming most seed, you know, responds well to heat and light in general with carnivores, as long, you know, and sphagnum is usually a pretty good media anyway, if not just using peat for the temperate stuff, I'd imagine. But you know, that's the two biggest things I think is, you know, heat and light, and you know, the moisture, of course, you know, keeping it really just moist is good.
I don't have too much experience with growing carnivorous plants from seeds, but I have grown fly traps and Sarracenia from seeds several times. Those are temperate species. They require basically a cold dormancy period in order for those seeds to actually sprout. And so generally, if you order seeds, you want to stratify them, you want to cold stratify them. And so what I have done is you basically put the seeds in a Ziploc bag with, you spray them with a little bit of a sulfur fungicide just to make sure they don't get any kind of weird mold when you put them in the fridge. But then you put them in the fridge for, I think I did it for like 2 or 3 months or so. And then after that, all you have to do is just take those seeds out, spread them on some peat / perlite mix, like you would with just repot Venus flytraps and Sarracenia, and then they're good to go from there. And you kind of just grow them indoors for the first year or so. I think in the outdoors, it's very, very finicky. You don't need dormancy for those first year, for that first year or the first 2 years. So they're pretty easy. The main thing is just you want to make sure that you get fresh seed and that you do give them that cold stratification period.
We have a question in the chat. When I removed pine needle mulch from my bogs, I found that most of my Sarracenias had rotted away. What went wrong? Should I apply a copper solution to save anything left, assuming it was a fungus?
Any chance you have a photo of what the rhizomes look like?
I don't have it here. It's mostly Sarracenia purpurea. I think it's completely gone. I think there's a little bit of sign of life in Flava and Leucophylla. Minor was in a different bog, and Psittacina was in a different container, and those seem to be fine. So it seemed like something got into the containers for my larger containers.
I can't say specifically what might have happened without knowing a few more details, but I've found that a big factor with dormancy under pine needles is if the plants are too wet. So if the trays are really deep and there's left standing in water for long periods of time in cold temperatures without light, that is really a great recipe for rot. So generally, you know, for my Sarracenia and for my fly traps that are potted in larger pots, those tend to survive the dormancy a lot better than those that are in, say, like 3-inch nursery pots. Those often don't make it. So I don't know if that's one of the factors that might be playing here, is that's the ones that died were the ones that were in the smaller pots or just happened to be more waterlogged. But that would kind of be my best guess. Otherwise, I would say like a copper, or I don't know about copper specifically, but like a sulfur fungicide wouldn't hurt. Although personally, I've never used it, and I don't have too many problems with fungus.
These were the deepest pots by far.
It's
One
the
was
opposite.
about 2 feet deep, and the purpurea was maybe about 6 inches deep. And the ones that were in shallow containers were the ones that survived, at least so far.
Yeah, I would definitely lend to Kevin's thing too. And you know, Casey probably has a even better inclination than I would, but I would definitely say, you know, with my Sarracenia, even in, you know, here in 7B, you know, I cover the bogs in the winter over the winter time with a plastic, and I actually limit the moisture level goes way down for me over winter. So yeah, and they're not dried out completely, but it's definitely way drier than the growing season. And you know, I would just kind of guess, you know, by the sound of it, with that much moisture, I would guess that even, you know, Sarracenia and dormancy probably wasn't liking that, if I had to guess.
I may have just left the pine needles too long, given that it was a comparatively warm winter and the ground thawed unusually early.
Yeah, I would say it's probably moisture is your culprit if there's that much rot. If it's overwintering in like the media that it grew in, there's probably enough like bacteria and microbial life to I would doubt that fungus would be a problem unless there's some kind of issue with moisture, or if it was just the media, if it was too tight or not too dense. Like I'm not sure what you grow it in, but you might experiment with adding more like vermiculite or perlite in future years, like a more open loose mixture, especially for those deep pots. If it's going to be really wet, that might help. But that's been my experience. If things rot over winter, it's because they're either too waterlogged or the medium was not open and airy enough.
It could be because they were old plants, and it was initially a mix of peat and either sand or perlite, but that could have degraded over time. I've not changed the soil at all.
I usually have issues with plants rotting, like Sarracenia or Venus flytraps rotting over winter if they've been taken out of their medium. Like I used to do the bare root thing, and that was always just a disaster, like a recipe for mold and fungus and stuff. But if you leave them in the dirt that they grow in, usually it's only the surface growth might get a bit of fuzziness on it or something. But yeah, it could be, yeah, it was warmer than usual or wetter than usual, perhaps, or the combination of the two. Or maybe the soil just didn't have enough. Yeah, it was too waterlogged or too heavy.
That is likely. No, thank you very much, everybody. I guess I'll change the soil and start over.
So quick question about Drosera. I've got these little seedlings. Is there a way of feeding them in order to stimulate further growth? Most of them are probably 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch diameter now. And they were grown from seed that I harvested 2 years ago.
I think we also had a similar question that was submitted in the chat. Earlier. I don't remember exactly the details of that question, but I'll talk about fertilization kind of in general and your question specifically. So what I use for fertilizer is MACPS. It comes in like, I think you can buy it in quart-size containers, maybe, MACSEA. I use it at 1/8 strength. So I think that ends up being something like 1 teaspoon per gallon, if I remember correctly. It's very, very dilute. Just look at the concentration that they recommend and dilute it to 1/8 of their concentration. So for sundew seedlings, I would just take the dilute mixture and just spray it just a couple of sprays. And that's the most that I would do. You can try doing that. In general, for fertilizing carnivorous plants, I think the 1/8 strength works really well. I've also recently gotten very bold and using MACPS, and I've actually made an extremely concentrated version and have poured it directly into Nepenthes pitchers and found that actually works super well, concentrated to the point that it actually doesn't fully dissolve. And I just pour a little bit. I know I'm like stepping on a lot of people's toes right now because I'm suggesting you actually over concentrate it, but I found that works really well for Nepenthes. But if you're using it as a foliar spray, definitely don't do that. I've also tried using concentrated MACPS and Sarracenia pitchers, and they do not like that either. So only for you Nepenthes growers out there, try that out.
I know when I've put it in pitchers before, I had like syringes is what I used to like get it into the pitchers, just to make that a little easier.
Yeah, that's what I do as well.
We had another question that was pre-submitted asking, are there local sources of native species of carnivorous plants? Have there been any efforts to reintroduce carnivorous plants into the Mid-Atlantic region? I know as far as like local sources for purchasing native species, Carnivorous Plant Nursery has them, and then Rick, what's the name of the Meadow View?
Yeah, Meadowview Biological Research Station. Phil definitely dabbles in, both native to, well, I guess, Virginia. It's mainly just up towards our area, probably mainly just purpurea is what you consider actually like native. But he does just about everything, every species of Sarracenia, and I think several Drosera as well. I know the other half of that question too, probably his efforts are the largest that I know of in the region as far as reintroduction goes. He's got a nice little reintroduced population there in Woodford, Virginia, that he's been kind of building up over the years. Although, the larger effort for Meadowview is definitely the longleaf pine population. So that's probably the main effort that I'm familiar with as far as the area goes. I don't know if any efforts are being made in that Suitland bog that we looked at last year. Do you know anything about that, Blake?
I don't think so. There's nothing that I know about them actually like introducing anything else in there. I know I had a question that we talked about a little bit earlier, but I will like ask again. I don't grow Nepenthes because I always have trouble with them, but at the last meeting, I won a lovely one from Rick, and it is growing, like putting out new growth, but all of the pitchers have totally dried out, which is the problem that I always have with Nepenthes.
Yeah, I know. We talked about what that would entail. I think that mainly the rules of good light exposure and humidity are the main components to getting that to happen with Nepenthes, and I'd say especially in windowsill conditions, or just like your average household conditions. Oftentimes Nepenthes kind of work more in a cyclical fashion where they're doing most of their pitchering and movement through the growing season for us here on the East Coast, and so you usually are going to just see progress in May through probably like September, October, and then during the shorter winter season, fall seasons, you're probably just not going to see a lot of movement or pitchering through that. So then the best thing to do is obviously to get Nepenthes in as stable conditions as possible for whatever they like. But short of that, the best things is just get as much light on it as you can, and then get that humidity as high as is comfortable or achievable for the grow space.
Do you think getting like a mini, I mean, I'm not able to have like any sort of greenhouse situation for it right now, but like getting like a mini humidifier and like putting it just next to my plants, like is that a good idea?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say if you've got a means to kind of separate the space and make it elevated a little bit higher than the rest of the house, even I would say that tens of percentiles can make a big difference. Like 50 to 60%, for example, I'd say would definitely even make a difference there. Getting a typical like cool mist humidifier, or even a fogger or something like that for the area, if that works. Obviously, you don't want to cause any issues with like water damage with your home or whatever. but yeah, if you can get it up at all, the more the better, I always say. I mean, most of my stuff grows like near 90%, and as long as the airflow is good, that's just fine.
We've been using these, it's like a ceramic ball that sits in a bowl for our orchids, and it bumps the humidity up pretty significantly. And there's a little one that's maybe 3 inches in diameter and another one that's about 6 inches in diameter. And they just sit on the windowsill amongst the orchid plants. Most of them are Phalaenopsis, and I've got some other stick growing varieties, but that really makes a significant difference, close to 25% increase. I'll find out. I'll post it on the website. My wife got them this year because we were having low humidity on the windowsill.
Yeah, that's cool. I haven't heard of that. If you find them and like post them in the Facebook group or something, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Do we have any other questions? I know we talked, Ray asked about LED lights, and we had a bunch of responses in the chat.
Yeah, I'll throw in my 2 cents about LED lights. And there's lots of options out there for sure as far as that goes. I'd say like probably dozens, if not hundreds. I'd say I'm a pretty big proponent of Carnivero's floor wave lights. I find that they're really great for getting the right balance of power and temperature. And the big thing about them, an issue I find with several other fixtures is their ability to be actually waterproof. So, I use a stack cabinet system where the lights are basically getting top watered all the time, because one shelf is on top of another. And they actually do really hold up well to that water exposure on a regular basis. And then I would say that, as far as value goes for, your money for the output, those YesCom lights that you can find on Amazon, the YesCom 225s, Usually each panel I think runs just shy of $20 a piece, but they actually put out a pretty powerful square of lights that I found is strong enough for most sun-loving species like cephalotus and flytraps and stuff like that. And they do a really good job of getting good color on those plants.
For the longest time, I actually grew carnivorous plants just under regular LED bulbs that you just, those regular light bulb shaped LEDs. And I grew plants for a good, 5 years under those lights. I also took the time to Dremel off that diffuser. So if you take that diffuser off, you'll realize that it's just a bunch of little small diodes stuck to that bulb part. That worked perfectly fine for me. They're really cheap. It's not very pretty, but it works. And so if you're on a budget, like a real, like really tight budget, that's a fine solution too. Any other questions? Don't be shy.
I have a question, if you can hear me.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna I can use my video now. I gotta switch it. I have this Nepenthes, I think it's an alata, and it's ginormous, and it's becoming unmanageable. How does anybody have any, like, I'm happy that it's doing well, but like, how does I bring it in at night when it gets too cold? It's just so unruly. Does anybody have any tips?
That is an awesome plant. Probably not an alata, probably a ventrata. So it would be a hybrid of Nepenthes ventricosa and gracilliflora, really.
I got it from the carnivorous plants nursery like 4 years ago, and that's what it was sold me at. So yeah, I don't know.
Even even nurseries that have many years of experience. I mean, this is my personal pet peeve. So even nurseries with multiple decades of experience will still mislabel ventrata as alata. True alata is actually really rare in cultivation. I do have a couple of different varieties, but it is very rare. So whenever someone tells me they have alata, it's almost 100% guaranteed it's not. But
well, it didn't match the pictures, so that would make sense.
Yeah. But that plant is super vigorous and it looks like it's growing really well. The kind of my first suggestion would be to kind of just cage it in a way. So I have mine growing in a tomato cage, and that makes it just a little bit more compact. But the other solution, which you may or may not like, is to just hack it up and turn it into cuttings and then have a bunch more plants.
Yeah, I did do that last year. And then where's the branch? It just started shooting out more out of the end of that branch, like right at the end. So it didn't really do much.
Yeah, you could hack it up some more and sell them at the auctions here.
I mean, I've still got 4 cuttings downstairs and under the grow light.
Yeah, at some point then it's just going to be, people can grow these to be really monsters, and then I think it's just trying to package it as neatly as possible, tying the things up, trellising it, going in a tomato cage. That's really the best you can do, but they grow really fast.
So I don't have a lot of window space. And so during the winter, I have to bring it inside because I'm up outside of Philadelphia. So I've tried not to do that because I like to grow it outside in the summer, but then it takes up like my whole grow light, and I have to like crowd other things out. So when you do cut it up, because that might be the best solution, what do you just leave the stuff that's rooted, or do you reroot the vines?
Leave the stuff. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, that depends on how I'm feeling. If I feel ambitious, yeah, sure, I'll take cuttings. I'm not, with ventrata, I'm not going to take 2 or 3 node cuttings. It's like the entire vine I'll just stick into soil. It generally will like roots without fail. It just depends on how many plants you want. You could get like 1 billion if you so chose.
Yeah. Then I just never got pictures off the last vine last year, which is what I loved. So curious. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say basically with like both my Ventradas and Mirandas, they basically just get a really, really, really harsh cutback for me every spring when I bring them, back out onto the patios. And I just hack, the majority of the vine back to just, that basically down to where the pot back, is. And, whatever woody stubs I've got left over usually will just sprout new growth points anyway. And it actually makes for usually a nice kind of attractive, bushier growth habit anyway, as opposed to being so gangly and viney. And I just, at this point, I don't even mess with what I cut off of them. I just, I toss it into the compost, and then, it gets crazy by the next season.
So how far back would you, so like this vine here, would you cut it back to, how far back would you cut it?
I would say you could go all the way back to like where the pod is, essentially, even though there's no leaves there or anything, it's just wood. And, as long as you leave at least one active basil there, it'll usually just continue to sprout from those woody parts and just start over again.
Because
So,
this
yeah,
one
I'd
right
say,
here is the one that I cut last year, and it's all wood now. So that one would die.
Yeah. I mean, I would say you can, just all the way back around if you really want to like, rein it in and shear it up. I found no issue with just going almost all the way back with it. And, maybe just leave that one at the top there that's looking really nice and kind of going upright. Yeah. And, just let the rest of them kind of flush back out if, space is a premium for you.
Right. Last, oh, I was just going to show some of the pictures. Is this, how do we identify this as not, I mean, I'm trusting you that there's not a lot of, but like, is there a way to identify it as a Ventrata?
I'd say like with pretty much, I'm sure Kevin probably would agree with me, I'd say 98, 99% certainty just based on the way that Ventrata is distributed and how it's sold and everything. I'd say you're confidently looking at a Ventrata here. The way that the pictures are looking, they're even dried out. I'd say, pretty definitively, I call it a Ventrata.
Cool. Well, that's better to know then.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think if we don't have any more questions, we can move on to the photo contest.
Sounds good. So I will share my screen, and then the photos will just play. There's no music at this time, so feel free to say any commentary that you guys would like. So let me just share.
And then at the end, the board members like voted, and then the top ones we'll show the top three, and then everybody here can vote on the grand prize winner.
Some really nice photos this year.
That's a unit.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like somebody's doing pretty well with my seed growing process there.
Yeah, that looks like one of your plants. So thanks to everyone for submitting photos, all beautiful photos. The board voted, came up with a top 3. So take your pick. Let's see if we can set up a poll by any chance.
Do you want to share your screen again, Kevin, so everyone can see
Yeah,
that?
my fault.
I'll launch the poll.
There you go. Can you see it?
Yeah, so everyone, please vote for your favorite. We have one person left who hasn't voted. Should we last call for votes, or?
I think it's me. I can't figure out how to do it, but I'm voting for number 33.
All right, then, yeah, number 33 has it then. Can everyone see the results? I'm not sure, it's my poll, so I'm not sure if everyone can see or if only I can see. So photo 33 wins with 6 out of 11 votes, and photo 12 takes second place with 3 out of 11, and 10 third place with 2 out of 11.
Congrats to those people. Interestingly enough, I think neither of those 2 people is actually on the call right now, but the rules did not state that you had to be present at the meeting. So photo number 33 was submitted by William Carter, who was ultimately called away from this meeting. And then number 12 was submitted by Evie Liu. Photo number 10 actually was also submitted by William Carter. So he's definitely got a good eye for some plants and some photos.
And
so
we
congratulations.
are awarding, so the first prize was a $50 gift card to Carnivorous Plant Nursery, and then the second and third were $25 gift cards to Carnivorous Plant Nursery.
Congratulations.
And then the last thing we have to do is our like door prize raffle. So for that one, people do need to be present in order to win. Let me see how I can share that screen. I don't know why that's not coming up. All right, can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. So this is all the people who RSVP'd and said they wanted to be entered, and then people who are paying members got 2 entries. So that's why some people have double names. So for the first one, let's see, we have, what were the prizes we were doing again? 2 $25 gift cards to Carnivorous Plant Nursery.
Yes, and also
Okay.
2 memberships.
Yeah. All right. So we had 21 people. Zoom things in the way of where I need to click. That's really annoying. Oh, okay. It moved. All right. So there's 21. All right. So number 6 is Emily. Is Emily here?
Do not see an Emily.
Okay. All right. We'll try again. Number 9, John. I know John's here. Yes. All right. So John, you get a $25 gift card, which we will email you the details of.
Can I just interject really quickly? I feel like John needs to go to like a casino and gamble a little bit or something, because I think without fail, he has won something from these raffles. Congratulations.
All right. 4. Drew Porter. Drew's here, right?
I am. Thank you.
All right, cool. You also get a $25 gift card to CPN, and then we're gonna do 2 year-long memberships. William Carter. I don't think he's here.
No, he's not.
Okay. Try again. 1. Eileen. Eileen's here. All right. You get a membership, which we will email you the details of. So you'll get it for another year. And then one more. Wait, we already had number 20. He's not here. That's that. Also William. Okay. Stephanie. Is Stephanie here? Stephanie. Nobody's speaking up. Is anybody saying anything in the chat?
No Stephanie, unfortunately, it looks like.
All right, we'll try again. Marianne?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. We'll get it. We'll get through this. Evie.
Nope.
All right. Missing out. Michael. He's here. Yeah. All right. Michael, you get a year-long membership to Mid-Atlantic Carnivorous Plant Society.
Congratulations, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So we'll get the details of how you can get your prizes. We'll send that correspondence through email. But that's basically all that we have for today. So we look forward to seeing you at our next meeting, which will be in person at Carnivorous Plant Nursery in Maryland in June. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us through email or on our Facebook group, and stay tuned.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Enjoy the rest of the day and
Thanks,
get
guys. Take
ready
care.
for the
Thank you. Great meeting.
Bye
Thank you all for coming.
forever.